Well, hey there, listeners. Welcome back to the show. And as always, Kath Langman, your host here. And we are, of course, talking about marketing brands and building really amazing premium brand businesses online. Now, I get to speak with many creative people every week. I'm talking to many brand founders. Some of them I work with, some of them are people like you who listen to this show and are looking to get a little bit of help in unlocking growth in your own businesses. And so today I really wanted to start with a sentence that I'm hearing all the time, almost every week, at least once. Usually turns up in a conversation about 10 or so minutes in, and I'm trying to quickly get to the heart of what they're struggling with, and it'll go something like this. I think if I could just crack Meta, I'd be able to scale. And sometimes it's Meta, sometimes it's if I could just get my social media working, sometimes it's I really just need to get some influencer content or UGC content happening. I don't have enough content. But the bottom line is that this sentence is always in the same shape. They're looking for one thing that they can do, or one lever that they can pull, or one locked door that they can unlock, and somewhere on the other side of it, all of the growth that they have been working towards will just suddenly flow easily and rapidly. I completely understand the appeal of this because one thing is just so much easier to hold in your head than everything. It's one skill to learn instead of 10. It's one problem to solve instead of a whole system to untangle. And it's a really hopeful way to think. But it's also, and I say this with a great deal of love, almost always wrong. There's something within the sentence, that one sentence that I'm going to name here, because it has become so common that I think lots of people have stopped noticing it. And also truthfully, it's been fed by a lot of people online, right? But it's somewhere along the way, the words marketing and social media have quietly collapsed into each other. People say marketing and they mean Instagram, or vice versa. They say marketing and they picture a news feed on their social media. They picture a posting schedule or a set of ads. And they do, so this enormous interconnected job gets shrunk down to something like, am I posting enough and are my ads working? So before we go any further, let me lay out what marketing actually is, because I think when you see this spelled out or hear this spelled out, the idea that, you're one thing away from massive success starts to look and feel just a tiny bit absurd. So, marketing is everything that happens between a total stranger first hearing your name and a happy customer buying from you and hopefully telling her friends. It's whether you're even discoverable when someone goes looking. They might go looking just about anywhere on Google, on TikTok, in a Reddit thread, in ChatGPT, or even speaking to a friend and asking for a recommendation in your product category. It is whether people discovering you are the right people. The right people are A, the ones who actually value what you make, and B, the ones who are actually going to buy it. And it's your offer, whether it's, priced and framed in a way that makes sense to the person that you're selling to. It's what happens when they reach your product page on your website after clicking on your ad or your social media post. And, which is where most of your traffic actually lands now, by the way, not your homepage, and probably not that lovely about page. They're going to go straight to your product page. Marketing can also be your email, both your welcome sequence and the flows that quietly do the follow-up while you sleep. It's what happens after someone buys, whether they come back, whether they become an advocate. Social media for sure is one slice. It's one part of that, and it's a very important slice. But when you say, I just need to crack social, what you are really saying is, I just need to get one room of the house in order. And meanwhile, the roof might be the actual problem. I spoke to a founder of a amazing looking brand just the last week. It's a fashion accessory, and products looked amazing and had really amazing opportunities lined up, ready for launching, and lots of the whole package was beautiful and really well considered and thought out, but it had a homemade website with a lot of AI generated content that was quite obviously AI, and a few other kind of related problems there. And this founder felt like all they needed was that kind of introduction piece. And it was just so obvious to me. The minute that that person was going to land on the website, it would just be, the most expensive exercise that they would experience, because that website just was not going to do justice to the expectations of the people coming. Now, here's what I have learned after many, many years of doing this, and for sure, getting it wrong myself more than once over the last 25 years. We'll get to some of that. Growing a premium brand is never one lever. It's a system, and yes, there will be a sequence. Something nobody usually warns you about, and something that I think should make you stop and think for a minute. The hunt for that one thing is not free, even if you're doing it yourself and you're not paying yourself for that time and effort. Every single month that you spend convinced that the answer is a single lever away from, is essentially a month that the real problem or problems sit there untouched, quietly costing you sales the whole time you might be looking in the wrong place. And that chase, it feels really productive because you're busy. You're doing things like testing, you're trying, that kind of busy work makes you feel really, really productive. And that is exactly what makes it so dangerous, because it can quietly become the single most expensive in your entire business, and you won't see that bill until much later. Now, hold on to that idea, because it is the third of three reasons that I want to walk you through, and it's the one that can really, have a sting in it. Now, the reason that the one thing hunt keeps failing comes down to those three things, and I am going to take you through all three properly, because honestly, the walkthrough is really the point here. And the people who promise you the one magic fix are usually going to be the problem who've never actually looked at the whole system. And so I want to look at it with you today. The first reason is the simplest, and I think it's probably the one you're going to recognize the fastest. It's really one broken thing in your marketing. It's several quiet ones all at once. When a brand is stuck, I think we all go looking for the drama, the one big fault, the obvious stuff. And the thing we can point at and say, that's it, that's the problem. I can see that, that's causing all of this, pain or failure or whatever it is. And that's, what's been really holding me back. But that's almost never how it actually goes. What's really happening is that you're losing people in 5 or 6 small places along the way, and not one of those places is loud enough on its own to generally demand your attention. Now, I'm going to give you a real example. Recently, I was going through the numbers for an Australian clothing brand. They had 55 abandoned checkouts sitting there from the last week, worth more than $4,000 in orders that got most of the way through the checkout and then simply evaporated. Now, the easy assumption here is price. People reached the end, saw the total, and got cold feet, and off they went. But when I looked closer, only 9% of those abandoned checkouts had so much as touched a discount code. So it wasn't the price of the products that was stopping them, it was the shipping. It was a really expensive flat postage rate and a really high free shipping threshold set so high that almost nobody would ever realistically reach it. And both turning up at the worst possible moment, right at the checkout, right as someone was deciding whether to go through with it. So there was $4,000 just essentially walking out the door at one step. Nobody had really noticed because a checkout doesn't send you a worried little email when it loses you a sale. It just loses it silently over and over. Compounding that problem, they had an abandoned checkout email set up. That's the automated, I mean, everyone knows what that is, right? The automated email sequence that follows up with people who leave something behind at the checkout. And, on paper, it kind of looked quite healthy. It had a really decent open rate at 36%, which is pretty good for email marketing. People were obviously opening that email, but then nothing happened. 0 clicks, 0 sales. And, this founder assumed that either the emails must be landing in spam or that there was, some other kind of similar problem. But actually, the emails were arriving because people were opening it. We could see that. What the problem was a broken button link. The link simply did not work. Who knows for how long? By the time, I got to have a look at it and my team got to have a look at it. But, this flow that was supposed to be one of their most dependable earners was just making them precisely $0. And even though the open rate looked really healthy, nobody had actually thought to look any further than that. And that's the thing that I really want you to sit with, because, it's the reason that these leaks survive for so long. They hide behind numbers that look fine, like the open rate that looked fine. The ad dashboard looked pretty reasonable. The traffic was coming through and it was converting. At, every surface level number that you'd glance at was reassuring enough that you would never think to dig. The metrics that would have shown you the truth, like the click rate under the open rate, or the conversion rate under the traffic, or the revenue per recipient under the spend, I mean, those are a layer down. Lots of people actually never look one layer down, let alone further than that, until something forces them to. So the leaks just keep leaking, dressed up in a healthy looking number. Individually, each of these things is not very big. A shipping setting, a broken button link, easy to miss, easy to shrug off, easy to promise yourself that you'll get to it later. But this is the whole trap. You go hunting for the one big thing, and meanwhile, you've got a whole lot of these little things, like a product page not converting a point below where it should, and an email flow earning not very much or nothing, and a checkout bleeding at the postage line, and XYZ other things all at the same time. And that, add them up, and realistically, that doesn't become a rounding error. It's significant, and it's the reason that you're stuck. Not one of those leaks has the faintest thing to do with just cracking social media. You could triple your ad budget tomorrow morning and every single one of those holes would still be exactly where you left them, and you'd just be paying more to pour water into that leaky bucket faster. Now, the second reason goes a bit deeper, and it is the one that catches some of the smartest, hardest working founders out. Even when you are pouring your energy into the right channel, you can be feeding it into a machine built for a completely different buyer than yours. I confess, I've learned this one the hard and expensive way. I'm going to take you back to my very first business back in 2006. And that particular business was one of Australia's earliest modern cloth nappy brands, Cushy Tushies. And if you weren't around for that particular moment, you have to understand something here. Most people had absolutely no idea that these things existed back then. When you said cloth nappy or diaper, if you're my northern hemisphere friends, when you said cloth nappy, the picture that appeared in everyone's head at that moment in time was a terry toweling square and a giant safety pin, the kind of thing that their nan used, the thing, that they had all been very relieved to escape. It was a chore. It would, those things weren't very effective and, were frankly a whole lot of hard work. But what we were actually selling was absolutely nothing like that. It was a genuine innovation. And, it was completely, I mean, it was the same category. Obviously, it was still a nappy, but it was a completely different thing. Here's what nobody tells you, though, about selling something genuinely new. Before anyone can buy it, they have to understand what on earth it even is. And there was also a bit of a pricing wrinkle sitting on top of that in that particular business of mine, which is something that I think many of you are also experiencing. And that is that particular product, obviously that was a modern cloth nappy, but it wasn't expensive just in and of its own. No, but nobody ever looked at it on its own. They were looking at it in context. They were looking at it sitting next to a pack of Huggies. I mean, not literally sitting next to a packet of Huggies because we weren't selling in big box supermarkets or anything like that. But, you know, in their minds, they were looking at it next to a packet of Huggies. And next to that packet of Huggies, it looked really dear because they were pricing it against the thing that they already knew, disposable nappies, instead of the thing that it actually was, a reusable product. They weren't weighing it up against years of disposables stacking up in landfill and on the credit card. They were comparing it to the number on the shelf right beside it just in that one moment. Now, if I had marketed that nappy the way Huggies markets nappies, I would have gone broke very quickly because Huggies marketing works on an assumption I simply didn't have the luxury of making. Every parent already knew what a disposable nappy was, and they already knew they wanted one. Huggies wasn't building a category, they were just winning a brand choice inside a category that had been completely settled for 50 years. You just grab it off the shelf, trust the name, into the trolley, done. My job at that time was the exact opposite of that. My job wasn't to win the brand choice, it was to build the whole idea in someone's head first. What this is, why it isn't what your nan used, why it saves you money even though the sticker price looks higher, why the pack of Huggies next to it is the wrong comparison entirely. If I'd skipped all of that and just run buy our nappies the way, you know, the big brand does, I would have been marketing to people who didn't even know they wanted what I was selling. And that isn't a campaign. That's pretty much just setting money on fire and wondering why you're cold. So here's the principle, and it covers many more brands than you would think. The wrong machine is any marketing machine built for a buyer who is further along than yours actually is. And it will show up in a couple of shapes. The first is the one that I just, I lived through back in 2006. The new innovation, the thing the market doesn't fully understand yet, marketed as though everyone already knows what it is and that they want its features and benefits. You're running a come and get it type campaign to an audience that's still standing there going, wait, what is this? And why is it more than the one that I already buy? The machine assumes the education has already happened, but it hasn't. You have to do that first. And the marketing that builds a category looks nothing like the marketing that wins a choice within one. The second shape looks a little bit different on the surface, but it's kind of the same mistake underneath, and it's the considered purchase. Picture a brand selling something really beautiful at, it could be several $100s, or it could just be something that's dearer than the average in that category. It's a high consideration product that a customer researches, thinks about, saves up for, and comes back to 3 or 4 times, maybe over a fortnight before she finally buys. And then picture that brand running the kind of marketing that's built for a 5-minute impulse buy. Short windows, countdown timers, buy now, this drop ends on Sunday, don't miss out. It's going to fall completely flat. And then the founder is going to be scratching her head, cannot for the life of her figure out why, because the ads look great and the product is genuinely fantastic and the photography is really beautiful. But the machine assumed that the buyer decides in minutes, but her buyer actually decides over days or weeks. Same error as my nappies. You've borrowed the playbook of a product whose customer is much, much further down their buyer journey than yours is. And here's what makes it worse. and what the impulse machine completely ignores. A considered buyer, before she's going to spend that money with a brand she's just discovered, is going to go and check you out. There's this whole validation search that goes on. She's going to Google you or search you up on TikTok to see if anyone real has talked about your brand. She's going to look for verified reviews. She might ask ChatGPT if you're any good. Essentially, she's doing her homework quietly, perhaps over a dozen little tabs open on her internet browser over a period of time. And if none of that homework turns up anything reassuring or anything at all, she doesn't buy, no matter how good the ad was. The impulse marketing machine, has no answer for that because impulse buying doesn't involve homework. So pushing that machine harder with more urgency or more ads or a bigger budget doesn't just fail to help, it actively works against the very customer you're trying to win, because you're rushing someone who needs time and shouting at someone who's, trying to quietly make up her own mind. And when it doesn't work, the instinct is often to push the machine harder. Unfortunately, that will only spend your money faster. Which brings me to that third reason I promised you at the start, the one that has the sting in it. Because the most expensive thing in your business is not your ad spend. It's basically the months that you pour into the wrong lever before you stop, before anyone tells you that's the wrong lever. A while ago, we were working with a beautiful premium jewelry brand, really beautiful pieces. We worked with them for quite a long time. They had, gorgeous branding. It was the sort of product that you would look at and just kind of, start quietly justifying to yourself that you might need this thing. And when we met, they were spending several $1,000s a month on Meta ads and even more on Google ads. So there was a lot of traffic coming through. The numbers on the dashboard looked reasonable enough at a glance. They were making quite good money already, but their conversion rate was sitting at well under 1%. And so she did what a lot of people do. And this is a completely reasonable thing to do. She assumed it was the ads. And so she went to work on the ads. New audiences, new copy, a fresh angle every few weeks, hours and hours of effort, real money, lots of content created, a lot of thought put into it, even new products, product launches, the whole song and dance. None of it really shifted the needle because it wasn't really the problem. When we started looking at all of this, one of the things, and again, it wasn't one thing, but one of the things that was quite a significant unlock was on her product pages. It was a default Shopify template, 3 or 4 photos, a description that listed the materials and the dimensions and said not very much else. Didn't say anything really about why anyone should care. There weren't reviews near the top. There weren't really any trust signals. There wasn't any story. And, literally this brand was asking people to spend several $100s on a piece of jewelry from a brand they just met based on a photo and a spec sheet. So needless to say, we rebuilt those pages and a bunch of other things as well, and their conversion rate tripled. So same traffic, same ads, same budget, but 3 times the return from fixing initially the most important thing, and the reality was, of course, that most important thing was the first thing that was happening after the click. But really what I want you to notice is the actual lesson here, because it's not actually the tripling of conversions and revenue, as satisfying as that is. The $4,000 a month was, spent on ad spend was actually not the most expensive part of all of that. I mean, she thought it was because she could see that number. It was on the statement, it was in the books, it was accounted for. But the genuinely expensive part was more invisible. It was, many, many months where she had spent trying to tune the wrong lever, rewriting the ads, rebuilding the audiences and the campaigns, chasing the ad problem she was so certain she had, while the real problems sat quietly untouched on a website she'd stopped really looking at months, years earlier in reality. And that is the bill that people don't really see. It doesn't go on a spreadsheet or in your Xero accounts. Uh, it's months of effort spent with total confidence in precisely the wrong place. Now, I want to talk about why that happens, because it happens to really clever people constantly. And it's not because anyone's stupid at all. It's that the wrong lever is usually the one you can see. It's the obvious one. Your ad dashboard is right there, updating in real time, full of numbers that you can pull and push and optimize. Obviously, it's also where we drop a lot of coin. So there's definitely a very strong emotion attached to that if it's not converting profitably out the other end. But also, it gives you something to do. The things like the product page or those other way less visible things behind the scenes on your website or anywhere else in this whole marketing system, they don't appear on your ROAS dashboard or in your ads dashboard. The broken email button isn't a line item that you see draining your bank account. The shipping threshold quietly killing your checkout doesn't necessarily show up anywhere near the metrics that you check every morning. And if you are generating enough shipping fees as revenue to cover your postage bill, you probably would never think to look there. So you optimize the thing that's visible and measurable and busy because it feels like progress, while the actual constraint sits in the blind spot the dashboard was never designed to show you. And there's an ego cost to switching too, if we're really honest. Once you've told those around you, whether it's your partner, your bookkeeper, your team, or whoever, your own reflection that the problem is the ads, turning around and saying, well, actually, I was wrong. It wasn't the ads, feels like a bit of it's like we're bursting the balloon. So people stay on the wrong lever a few months longer than they should, defending a diagnosis. I mean, there's this whole concept called the sunk cost fallacy, and that's what it is here, where the fix was actually somewhere else that they just hadn't really thought to look. So if it isn't one lever, what should you actually do instead? Because I don't want this to just be a doom and gloom episode. I want to give you something productive. You want to stop hunting for the one thing to begin with and start looking for your one constraint. Those things might sound similar, but they are completely different acts. The one thing is a fantasy. It's a single magic fix or silver bullet that makes everything else irrelevant. Your one constraint is real and specific, and it's the particular place where your particular system is losing the most right now, in this moment, this month. It's probably not the most exciting problem. It's probably not the shiniest new tactic that everyone around you might be talking about and boasting about, but it will be the actual bottleneck. And the way you find it is almost boringly practical. You have to start by walking the whole journey from a stranger who's never heard of you all the way to a customer paying full price. And you have to ask at every stage, honestly, am I losing people here? Can people even discover me when they go looking, or am I invisible the moment someone searches my category? When the right people do find me, do they trust me enough to consider me, or is there nothing there when they go to check me out? When they land on my product pages, do they convert them? Or, does it just basically ask them to spend real money on a photo and a spec sheet? Do the ones who don't buy straight away ever hear from me again? Or am I like that bad girlfriend who never reaches out with her mates unless she needs something? We want the follow-up to do something, not nothing. Somewhere along that line will be the place that you're leaking the most, and that's your constraint. You've got to, fix that thing first. There'll be other constraints beyond that, but you've got to fix the urgent one first. Which means essentially we have to accept that there will be a series of fixes, and you have to fix things in the order that actually makes sense. Sequence is everything here. There's no point pouring your energy into converting people if nobody is discovering you in the first place. You'll just end up with a beautifully optimized product page that 4 people a week ever lay eyes on. And equally, there is no point flooding a page with traffic if that page is the leakiest hole in the bucket, because all you've done is fill that leaking bucket faster and pay for the privilege of watching it drain out onto the pavement. So discovery first, so the right people can find you, and then the intelligence to actually know what your buyer needs to hear and where she's hesitating. Then conversion, so the page turns that hard-won attention into a sale in that order. If you fix them out of order, that's how people spend an absolute fortune and feel like they're just running in their business to stand still and not grow. A few weeks ago on this podcast, I did an episode called Busy Isn't Growing, and that was all about how working harder had quietly stopped moving the needle in your business. And, like I said earlier in this episode, busy work makes you feel productive, but it's often just exhausting and doesn't necessarily help you to grow. But this podcast episode is kind of the sibling problem. And so that one was about effort, but this one is about aim. Because I have never once in all my years of doing this met a brand owner who wasn't working hard. I think that is genuinely never the issue. The issue is that all of that hard work, all of that, whether it's the early mornings, the late nights, the weekend efforts, is, or might be in your case, being aimed at a single lever, that one thing, when the thing actually holding you back is sitting somewhere else in the marketing system entirely, just waiting patiently to be noticed. I want you to notice what we just did across all of those three reasons, because it's the whole point of this episode. We didn't find a magic fix anywhere, not once. We found multiple things, whether it was a shipping setting, a broken button, a pricing comparison happening quietly in someone's head, a product page that came after the click. None of it's glamorous. None of it is the sort of thing that goes viral or makes a good reel, but all of it is completely fixable. And that is the real work of growing a brand. And it is the exact opposite of just crack this one thing and then you're going to scale. So the next time someone promises you it's just one thing, one hack, one platform, one funnel, I invite you to be quite suspicious, because anyone telling you that is either selling you something or they simply haven't looked hard enough. What I will leave you with, though, the next time you catch yourself thinking, if I could just crack this one thing, or, finally get my content pipeline cranking, I want you to just stop and ask a different question. Not what's the one thing, but where is my one constraint right now? My biggest constraint. Where specifically in that whole journey from stranger discovering me to a customer paying preferably full price and coming back, am I losing the most? Because unlike what's the one thing, that question actually has an answer, and it's almost never that one thing that you've been staring at. If you don't know or can't identify the answer, if you genuinely can't tell whether it is discovery or conversion or something going on in your buyer's head that you've simply never asked about, I want you to be really clear that it is not a failing, just means that you're guessing the way the overwhelming majority of brands are guessing every day. The fastest way that I know to stop guessing is to go and ask the people who already bought from you and the ones who very nearly did and then didn't. You can ask them what got them over the line, or what, nearly stopped them or did stop them. Ask them what they were worried about. Ask them why Lenny the dog is barking at the door, if you can hear that. Ask them what finally got them over the line to become a customer or a raving fan. That's just as an aside, we do have our customer intelligence survey playbook built to help with that if you really don't know how to go about that kind of an exercise. And it will hand you, doing that exercise will hand you the real reasons in your customer's own actual words, so that you can stop turning the wrong lever in the dark guessing and go straight to the one that is genuinely constrained. I might just pop the Customer Intelligence Survey Playbook link in the show notes. I'll also just pop our brand discovery call in there as well, if you would like my eyes on your business and helping you to strategize through this. Bottom line is, I hope that you can stop looking for the one thing, go and find your biggest constraint right now, And hopefully that will be at least the unlock for you in this moment in time. That is it for today's episode, though. And as always, I look forward to being back in your ears again this time next week. Bye for now.